work at hand here. Madam Manager, if you'll give us a brief overview.
Yes, sir, Chairman, Commissioners. On August 18th of this year, the board directed the clerk to take and the manager take the actions necessary to reestablish the Consolidated Human Services Board. As you know, you all have been acting as that board capacity for about 9 months. We advertised for the positions, and we have presented to you in your agenda package, as well as you have gotten some today, I believe, applications for positions that we are required by state statute to complete. There are 2 actions that you need to take tonight. First is you need to nominate the persons to serve on a reestablished Consolidated Human Services Board, list the names of the individuals to reestablish that board, and I believe, as I discussed with each of you today, staff took a stab at terms, but it's certainly up to the discretion of the board as to those individuals and what terms you wish for them to hold. The general statutes indicate 4-year terms. When we had the board before, and staff would still recommend that you do staggered terms so that you don't have an entire board rolling off at the same point in time. The way we did it before is 1, 2, 3, and 4-year terms. So we will leave that up to the individual board members. The next action you would take after you nominate the individuals in the specific position they are to fill is to adopt the appropriate resolution that reestablishes that board and those individuals.
Okay. So we need a list of names first, and then the roles that they will take and the period of time in which they'll serve.
Right. What we have attempted to do in Exhibit A that was in your agenda package is we have grouped those that we knew were consumers of human services, which we have to have 4 of those individuals. You are also required to have a psychologist. We have no application for a psychologist at this point in time. A pharmacist, you do have an application for a pharmacist. We have no applications for an engineer. We have 1 application for a dentist, 0 applications for an optometrist, 1 for a veterinarian, 1 for a social worker, 1 for a registered nurse, none for a psychiatrist, 1 for a physician, and then I believe you have 3 or 4, I'm not sure, for other persons that do not have to fill any particular category. So what we would need for you to do this evening is to identify the person for each of those roles and what term you would like for that individual to serve.
All right.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to give it a shot?
Go for it.
All right. If you'll bear with me for 1 second here, I'm going to, if it's okay with you, I'm going to attempt to do both at the same time. Can I do the term and the?
Sure.
All right.
And once I get into the professions, I may. I'm just going to go with what we have proposed here. So, for position number 1, consumer of human services, a 4-year term, I'd like to put forward Louis Philippi. Consumer of human services for the 3-year term, I would like to put forward. I'd like to put forward Gary Sides. For the consumer with 2-year term, I'd like to put forward Nathaniel Sumner. And for the consumer with 1-year term, I'd like to put forward Ashley Lance. We do not have a psychologist to date. For the pharmacist, for a 3-year term, Ms. Paula London. We do not have an engineer. For the dentist, for a 3-year term, I'd put forward Dr. Angela Holler. We currently do not have an optometrist. For a veterinarian, I'd like to put forward Dr. Jeff Broadway. For a social worker for a 3-year term, put forward Ms. Eunice McGee. Registered nurse, 1-year term, Ms. Amy Baker. We do not have a psychiatrist, but for the physician, I'd like to put forward Dr. Chandra S. Holler. Let's see, and for other persons, I would like to put, for a 3-year term, Miss Jeannie Pritt. For a 1-year term, Mr. Daniel Fraser. And I'm slightly reluctant on the last one, but for a 4-year term, I'd like to put forward Commissioner Jonathan Thomas, or he would be a private citizen at that point in time.
You only have 2 slots unless you increase the size of the board.
So we do not have additional slots.
You can increase the size of your board. When we constituted it initially back in February of 2013,
Okay.
you established 17 members. You could, in fact, establish more than 17 members because you can have
So
up to
in my-
25.
In my recommendation for tonight, do we have to do anything different to constitute a bigger board, or no? How about this? I'll save you some trouble. Let's just make Jeannie Pritt the 1-year term and Jonathan Thomas the 4-year term. And then if the future board would like to go back and revisit the possibility of extending the board, we can do that.
The only question that I have been made aware of is whether Mr. Philippi is actually a consumer of human services.
He is a consumer of human services based on my discussion with him at that point in time.
To my knowledge, he is working with the Veteran Service Office.
And that qualifies according to the statute?
As far as I know, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not the lawyer, but since it is human services, yes.
Well, I'll entertain the motion. In the event that we need to change it, it will remain up for amendment if need be. How about that? Everybody
sounds
good for
great.
that?
That's phenomenal.
All right. See, you all didn't think I could move things along. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, any discussion before I call for the vote? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. All right, thank you. That will take us to, if you want to ask Commissioner Johnson to come back in.
Or Thomas, whichever.
Oh, yeah, it's twin.
Oh, lo and behold, there he shows.
I'm like a little genie.
All right, item number 7.
This is in concert with the action that you just took when you took on the responsibility as the Consolidated Human Services Board, as well as your role as Board of County Commissioners. We provided the dangerous dog hearings to the advisory board. This amends the ordinance and puts that responsibility back to the Consolidated Human Services Board.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the amendment to the Union County Animal Control Ordinance.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That'll take us to item 7A. Commissioner Johnson. Thomas. Oh, I'm gonna miss you, boys.
It takes 2 of us to make a good one, right?
Golly.
All right, well, I asked for this agenda item to be placed on here. We had received a request last year from HealthQuest with respect to their need for the electronic medical records that's coming up, will be mandated by 2015. And that is a federal mandate that they've got to do. And let me say as an aside, Commissioner Johnson and I had an opportunity to tour that. Ms. Horn carried us around back in April, and at the time, I think it was the board chair, Lynn Ray, showed us. And I have to tell you, if I can take an aside for just a moment, back when I was looking at running for office, I spoke with a gentleman much wiser than I ever will be, and it's a gentleman by the name of Harry Sherwood. And Harry Sherwood talked so fondly of HealthQuest and Hospice of Union County. That was his 2 projects. And if you all knew Harry Sherwood, politically or apolitically, you better hold on to your wallets when the boy came through the door, because he was getting ready to ask for some money for something. And you couldn't tell Harry no. That was the problem with Harry. But that was a good thing, and Union County has sorely missed his presence here since his passing. But this was his vision, and I know there was another visionary there, but he was the one who really, I think, was the muscles behind it all to get HealthQuest up and going. And I was blown away at the gap, if you will, of the people that we serve in social services and we expect to be able to provide for their medications, and there simply is not there. And in order to live life, they have to make a very costly decision, and 9 times out of 10, it comes down to their medication, which leads to ER visits and so forth. So not only, with that being said, this is an outstanding organization who has a real need for funds, and so 75,000 of their requests would go towards that, and they're matching it with the Duke Endowment to be able to meet that need. The other 25,000 that they've requested is for HVAC repairs on a 10-year-old unit that was installed and is going to need some repairs. Very quickly, they do serve 1,600 low-income, underinsured Union County residents, and HealthQuest, like all nonprofits, are recovering from a challenging 2 to 3 years of fundraising. That we used to fund that board and that organization at a much higher level, and then in 2008, I think it was, I'm pulling from memory, we cut funding to all agencies, including our nonprofits. But with medications, as some of you know, there are growing, and some of them in cost as much as 800% annually. This past year, they used 4,000 volunteer hours. So this HVAC unit is going to go help to support those volunteers that come back in. But the impact here that they saw from providing their services is 75% of their clients reported improvement in their health in 1 year of enrollment in the program. 65% of them saw a decrease in our ER visits, and 83% of those saw a decrease in work absenteeism. Their return on investment is for $1 is almost $20, and it's probably directly tied to that level of volunteerism. So tonight we have with us Ms. Heather Horn, who is the executive director. And we also have their chairman of the board, Mr. Chad Griffin, who's the vice president of Charlotte Pipe. I want to thank you all for being here this evening and being available for any questions. And to say the least, we've got their own Miss Jane Balcom back there, who's been employed, what now, year and a half? 2? 3? I can make 3, Jane. I can't do 2 hardly, but 3 I can do. So with that being said, I'd like to put forth a motion that we fund them at $100,000 from our general fund.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Yes.
Can I make a clarification, please?
Sure.
General fund balance.
Yes, general fund balance.
Thank you.
Did I not say that correctly?
Good try.
Okay, yes, thank you. All right. Richard's fault.
Valiant effort. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? None. All right, that will bring us to item 7B, which Commissioner Helms, you asked to have the discussion on.
That particular item is a redefinition of our procurement policy, and I think our current policy is quite old. Is that a fair statement?
15 years, yes, sir.
That's what I thought. Even to me, that's old. But I think trying to read through the details, it's fairly comprehensive, and I was just asking that we take the time to present to the details to the commissioners so we can fully understand and look at. I mean, the first time I saw this was Thursday when the package came out, so I'd like to have some additional information before asked to vote on the changes to the procedures.
Okay. Manager, you add anything?
I can go over some of the more significant changes that were made to the policy. As I indicated, the policy is 15 years old. Unfortunately, the value of $1 15 years ago is significantly different than the value of $1 today. The areas that we made the changes on as it relates to purchase of goods, first I'll say the policy has to follow all state statutes. In many cases, we have made our policies more restringent than is required by state statute to provide the internal controls within the county. On the purchase of goods, there was no change from the 1999 policy as it related to the dollar limits with respect to one exception, and that was on what we call low value or small spend items. Back in 1999, it was $2,500. We have increased that to $5,000 as it related to soliciting the 3 quotes. On the procurement of construction services, The one change in that is also in the low-value, small spend area, where in 1999 it was $4,999. We increased it to $10,000, but less than $30,000. As it relates to procurement, and this is probably the most significant change, the procurement of other services, non-architectural engineering and survey services, our policy now, right now, even if it is for $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, requires that we go out for a request for proposal. As this board knows, requests for proposals are very time-consuming. Usually takes staff to develop the proposal. We have to advertise it publicly. It has to be submitted to procurement. We have to evaluate the proposals. We recommend that that be changed to 3 different levels. Contract for services greater than or equal to $30,000 would be done through the procurement team. Contracts for greater than or equal to 10 but less than 30, an RFP would not be required, but they would have to do verbal quotations, and that the manager could exempt services from the RFP process when in the best interest of Union County up to $50,000, and that would be reported out to the board anytime that occurred. Other changes. Probably the other more significant change is right now a lot of our procedures are embedded within our policies, and we are recommending that those procedures be pulled out and actually be done as procedures and not intermixed with a policy manual. And Mr. Yates, I don't know if you have other areas that you might want to cover.
Well, I just want to say, this is the culmination. When we formed the procurement division in finance, back during the consolidation when we were reorganizing, this is one of the very first things we put on our list. So this has been a process that's been in work, under construction, I guess, since that time period. This is the one thing that I didn't get finished in my first year with procurement. So we brought on our procurement manager in the last year, hired very capable buyers to go through this process. And what this does is structures our policy up to date in conjunction with the general statutes, and allows us to move forward in a way that makes sense for us and makes sense for the community and the businesses that want to do business with us. We had over 100 different vendors come to a vendor fair. I think it was the 29th or 30th of October, right around that time. And what we heard from them is, we want Union County to be open to doing business. So what we've designed this procurement policy around ensuring that we can do business with the community and it's expeditious for them, hence not making small dollar projects do RFPs because they're costly, but also allows us the appropriate controls. And I think that this policy achieves that. The one thing the manager didn't mention is architectural engineering services by general statute can be exempted. So this also does that. So what we've done is tightened it up to the general statutes and allowed the flexibility where it made sense, or as Jeff would always call it, practicable. So, and what this does is puts a lot of the oversight through the procedures to ensure that these processes are followed and that we're fair and open to the businesses in the community. So with that, I'll entertain any other questions.
So if I heard you correctly, most of this is outlined by statute. So there's really no deviation.
If we deviated from statute, we placed a greater burden upon ourselves than is required by state statute.
And this policy's going forth. I mean, from adoption forward.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Policy applies.
Yes, sir.
And what I've charged my staff with is we'll be doing additional training. But again, these are not much, these are a little different than what we do now, but not so far off the range that we won't be able to implement this immediately. So I think we'll be in good stead.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if you'll entertain a motion. I move that we adopt the proposed Union County procurement policy based on the fact that it's goes along with state statute or more restrictive.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? All right. That will take us to the next item, which is comprehensive annual financial report.
As well as the popular annual financial report, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Yates.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I told Jeff he had 5 minutes, so. so the audience can start throwing stuff at him if he gets over 5 minutes. That's what we do at the Baptist Church, just.
Commission, first I want to introduce John Kapler, who's here with Potter and Company. He's the partner that represents our external audit firm, so I wanted to give him a couple minutes to speak to you as he is your external auditor, and then I want to go over the financial results. I'll try to keep it to 45 minutes.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Hope you don't throw things at guests either. So. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, county manager, just want to thank you, and I'm pleased this evening to come forth with Jeff and to present the county's comprehensive annual financial report for June 30th, 2014. First, just let me thank you for letting us, our firm, do this service for the county. Certainly enjoyed it. And the second, I want to commend the work of the finance division of the county. Jeff, Debbie, Beverly, Andrea, and the entire finance department were helpful and wonderful to work with. It really takes a lot in a team effort to bring a project of this magnitude together in a short amount of period of time that we are required to do so. Underneath the financial section of the CAFR, you will find our independent auditor's report. We have issued an unmodified opinion on the statements of Union County as of June 30th, 2014. An unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we can give as certified public accountants, independent accountants, and states that the financial statements were presented fairly in all material aspects of the financial position of the county as of June 30th, 2014. This is commonly referred to as a clean opinion. In addition to the independent auditor's report, we've also issued a group of reports on the county's compliance. These reports deal with the county's compliance with governmental auditing standards, in addition to compliance of federal and state programs with various federal and state laws and regulations. Again, we found no instances of material noncompliance, material question costs, or material weaknesses that were required to be reported underneath these applicable statutes and regulations of the federal and state programs tested. The last thing I wanted to just bring to attention, and Jeff will probably go into more detail on some of this, was the performance of the county's general fund for this past year. For the year ended June 30th, 2014, the county's general fund appropriated $20.7 million in fund balance in its final budget figures for the year. The final results showed that the county did not have to dip into its reserves in 2014 as it had planned. The county's general fund had an increase for 2014 of $478,000. And it should be noted that this $478,000 increase in the general fund was after transferring $17.9 million from the county's general fund to other funds throughout the county. Again, I'd like to thank the county the opportunity to do this service, and I guess, Jeff, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
If you're ready to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for John? So we're going to kind of move on and go into a little bit of detail. I do want to publicly thank John and his team. Sheila, she was on site. They're excellent to work with, and John and my staff know I'm a pretty hard taskmaster when it comes to getting statements out in a timely manner. So they worked with us, and save for a state issue this year, we would have hit our deadline, which generally is October 15th, but given the state's data reporting issue with Medicare, Medicaid, we had some issues. So tonight, what I want to do is kind of come before you, talk just briefly about the financial results, as John alluded to, for the year ended June 30, 2014. And I'm kind of excited because this, to me, is the official close of that and gets us ready for our next point in the cycle. So tonight we'll look at the general fund. We'll review the county's current position, talk about the general fund and available funds, analysis of the actuals, our debt commitments, the general capital fund, the volunteer fire department fund balances, and the enterprise fund position, and then some final thoughts on 13-14, and then we can excitedly get started on 15-16's budget cycle. So, Commissioner Johnson, I know you're sad that you're not going to be here for that process. As Cindy mentioned, we're talking about the comprehensive annual financial report. So this year we did something different, and very few counties in North Carolina do this. We put out what we're referring to, or what we call the popular annual financial report, or the Citizens Annual Financial Report, and that's the small book that you should have at your seat. It'll be on our website tomorrow morning. This is the boiled down version. It's generally referred to as the Citizens Financial Statements. It's simplified for the public, and it's a communications piece that avoids the detail that you can get into with your financial statement notes and those other things, but really tries to present the county's financial position in a readable way that the residents can understand. And this continues on with our philosophy of transparency in finance. So what we're really trying to do is work to documents that the general public can use to understand where we are. And that's what what we refer to as the PAFR comes into play. And this was done at our staff level. Chris and Andrea and Debbie and Beverly put this together, and the folks in finance. So it's a really nice piece. It's a really well done piece that kind of gives you a real 20,000 foot view of the county finances going forward. So our current financial position, one of the things as we started in the last few years and when I came here that always interested me is the county's total net assets. And while the general fund or the governmental activities is in the negative position, for the first time since 2006, the county is in a total positive net position. And this is a result generally in the governmental funds of borrowing all the money for schools and giving the schools properties over to the school system while maintaining the debt. Kind of like if you had gone out, got a mortgage on a house, then you gave the mortgage to somebody, or you gave the house to somebody else but kept the mortgage, you would have a liability but no asset. And in this case, what we see this year for the first time, like I said, since 2006, is we've actually achieved that positive countywide net position. Granted, that includes all of your enterprise funds and everything total, but I think that's a very good sign moving forward that we've achieved that this year. Fund balance, it's always helpful before we talk about fund balance is to real quick remember what we're talking about. Fund balance ultimately is the difference between the fund assets and the fund liabilities, but given GASB 54 and the changes that they've made, it also has us reclassify or look at the chunks of fund balance for different components. So you have the non-spendable pieces, which are the pieces that are inventories and so forth that you can't really cash in or that you really can't take to the market and spend. Restricted, meaning that some external agency, such as the federal government, bond commitments, contracts, or other things outside of the county are restricting those funds. Committed, this is a legal constraint imposed by the commission itself. Assigned, at a little lower level than committed, meaning that the board's appropriated it or has taken an action to do that, they can undo it. And then unassigned fund balance means those are really surplus funds that are available for any lawful purpose. So with that in mind, where are we in the general fund? Our total fund balance in general fund is about 80.1 million. You can see the detail there. About 204,000 of non-spendable, almost 205,000. Restricted of about 15 million. And this, what that represents largely is accounts receivable. When you book that asset, you can't really spend it because you haven't received it yet. Our committed is the 31.9 million, and that represents the portion of your fund balance policy, which is the 20%, the portion of the fund balance policy attached to the general fund. And if you remember a few meetings back, we had you amend your fund balance policy to include the school's budgetary fund. Well, given the timing of that, because that wasn't in place by June 30, that portion, the school's budgetary fund balance, which is required by your policy, ends up in assigned at 31 million or 31.1 million, and that's also any other fund balance usage that you had as part of your budget. So you can see the unassigned at June 30 is 1.9 million, and then with the action taken last week with the contingent liability, that drew down to about 1.4 million of unassigned. Now granted, that leaves you with your 20% reserve policy over that, but that's pretty much the unassigned, meaning available for any lawful purpose at this point for the commission's use. And given your action earlier tonight, now that number is about 1.3 million.
Okay.
Real quickly, general fund, the fund balance, how it breaks out. I won't go through all this in detail. I just wanted to provide it to you, and this presentation will be on our website. Sometimes understanding kind of what's in each of the pieces is a little difficult, but as you can see, the non-spendable is prepaid items, inventories, long-term receivables. The restricted, encumbrance, accounts receivables, mainly grants programs and so forth. Then you see the 20% reserve policy, the 20% reserve policy that's in the schools fund, and then the unassigned or the subsequent year's appropriation, and then the unassigned. General fund operating results. As John alluded to, we had budgeted about $20 million worth of fund balance usage in the last year, and we ended up coming out positive, which basically means we made up the difference through a number of items, and I'll kind of go in a little bit more detail. But I think it's important to note that we didn't miss our revenue estimates by 20 million, or we didn't underspend by 20 million. It's a combination or a meeting of the two items. So when we look at revenue, we had revenue about 5.2% above estimate. And this is kind of how it breaks out. Property tax collection, meaning the ad valorem tax, not related to automobiles, because I want to talk about that in just a second separately. But we had about $2.5 million dollars more than what we had anticipated. And if you remember back, the general statutes require us to estimate our ad valorem revenue at our last collection rate. So we push it as far as we can, and Van and his team in the tax office do a really great job collecting for us. So every time we see that number creep over, and I think we're at like 98.5% at this point, you know, it is possible to collect over 100% because you have delinquents and so forth. So Van and his group have done a really nice job doing that collection. So that's where you see that $2.5 million come into play, is the aggressive collection tactics used by the county to try to retrieve those tax dollars. And if you go back to the spring of 2013 during our budget development, and we were talking about the change in motor vehicle tax, where you had to pay your taxes when you got your tags. We knew that we were going to have a little bit of an overhang. So the first year of that program allowed us 4 months of collections, essentially 16 months of collections. 4 months overhang in the old program, and then a monthly 12 months of the new. So what we had anticipated was about $5 million. Again, what we saw was about $6.1 million. So that's that additional collection. And when we talked with the LGC and the state treasurer's office and asked them, how do we budget that, given the general statute requirement to budget your collection rate, what they advised us was to essentially budget as if you're not going to get it. And if you remember back to our conversations during the projections, during the budget time, we always knew we were going to get that $3 to $5 million. So that was kind of known that we were going to have that difference in there. But we really couldn't go back and budget for it based on the guidance we received from the LGC. So that's come to fruition. Our sales tax collection is up about 9.3% over the estimate, which shows a strong recovery in economy, keeping in mind, that recovery is fragile at times, depending upon market conditions and kind of what goes on in the community. And then the all other sources, if you were looking at everything but those things we pulled out, it's about $869,000 of revenue over estimate. So that could be any number of things. We have several hundred revenue line items. I didn't want to go into finite detail about every one of them. I can, though, if you'd like, Mr. Johnson. Okay. So, but keep that in mind. So this is kind of where that 5.22% came from. The expenditure analysis, if you go down and through and you kind of look where we saved our funding, there's a large chunk of it that comes through our operating cost, and a part of that comes through the benefits payments made in the human services, where we budgeted a significant payment, but we did our significant payments to clients, but we didn't make all those payments. So those are pass-throughs, and those pass-throughs didn't happen in some cases. But you see, we were about 3.6% under-expended, if you will, or we could have spent 3.63% more. But I think it's a credit to the organization that we continue to, all year long, round off the edges of our budget and try to not spend it if we don't have to. And that's kind of the philosophy that trickles down from the management all the way down into the organization. We need to do what we've said we will do, but do that in the most efficient way possible. And as we get through the year, what we see is through attrition, which would be the employee compensation and benefits savings, through our debt service, which this is the impact. If you remember back of the refinance we did and the termination of our swaps, we saw the $2.1 million savings and so forth. These things kind of play themselves out. So while we would like it to be a little tighter, I would much rather be in a position where we underspent by 3% than have overspent by 3%. So I think this is a credit to the organization. So when you take those two things, you see the $9 million here, and on the revenue side, you see about $12 million, $11 million. Those two things together is what generates that $11 million or that $20 million overage from the prior year. So you kind of get it coming and going when you're looking at revenue and expenditures. Real quick on our debt breakdown, I know you guys have seen this just for the folks following at home. This is kind of where we are as of September 30. The biggest chunk of our, June 30. Our biggest chunk of debt, $418 million in our balance, sits with our schools. South Piedmont's about 2.6. Our general government's about 20.2. And then our water wastewater utility is about 58.6. Keeping in mind the 58.6 is covered through fees. not through taxes. The remainder of that is covered through, that annual debt service is covered through taxes. When you look at our capital projects fund, you have restricted and assigned. Every dollar in our capital projects fund is assigned to capital projects. And you can see, looking at the project list, where that funding is at this point, as far as what sits in that $41 million assigned. And then you can see the restricted. Largely it's school capital, because once you appropriate that to the schools, you can't get it back. It doesn't come back to the county. It's restricted and required to be spent by them. The VFD funds, I think Johnny left. This is the one he's always interested in. In your budget ordinance, what you have said is that any fund balance at June 30 will be used in the following budget year. So this fund balance, June 30, 2014, will be used for the 15-16 budget year to help offset or to be used by the VFDs as part of the budget cycle. So now where we are is we have an audited financial statement that tells us what those balances are. And you can see here Springs, so forth. These are all your tax districts, with the exception of the fee-supported group, and that's a much bigger group. It's about 13 different volunteer fire departments. So you can see these will be the starting place then for these tax-supported districts. As we start the next budget cycle, this funding will be available, and I'm sure we'll probably recommend that we use that for equipment or one-time costs, because these are one-time funding sources. Do you have a question, Commissioner? Okay. Water and sewer net position, you can see largely, because they're a business type of enterprise, you see they net invested in capital, meaning their infrastructure, restricted for debt service by bond covenant, and then unassigned other, which basically represents what we have set aside for capital coming up, the large projects. As the commission has done rate increases over time, that money's been saved, if you will, to be able to cash fund a significant part of their capital program. And their capital program's over $400 million. So this will be a small portion of it, but it'll at least help defray some of the cost on the rate side. Probably the biggest chunks in the water and sewer fund on the revenue side is they had a much better year in tap fees than they had anticipated. When you go back and look in more detail, the usage picked up after the start of the year. So we achieved roughly about where we thought we would be. We had some intergovernmental revenue that came in as a result of a payment. I believe that was from the the Catawba Water Authority. And then you had the tap fees, which basically just signals continue what we know and can see through our building permits, that there's growth going on in Union County. And all that money then will be plowed back into the capital program, which is where when we set the rates, we continue to work toward moving any excess funds in that fund to help reduce the future debt load. We've had a lot of success in pushing off either the debt issuance or moving the funding around to reduce that debt load over time. So with that, couple of final thoughts just for 2013-14 as we kind of wrap up and start to look toward January. I think the county is in very sound financial condition. I think that's positive. And if you were to look around and benchmark us against other counties our size, I think we're in very good shape. I think our comprehensive financial report reflects that focus on sustainability that you as a commission have brought and have stated that that's one of our highest priorities. And again, our future focus really is going to be on incremental improvements in our processes and our planning tools. And we're going to continue to work on improving transparency. And I think you see the path for tonight as part of that. In our upcoming budget cycle, we'll do some additional things, which I'm not quite ready to unveil yet, but we're going to try to work through some additional improvements. So with that, I just thank you for the opportunity to provide you the CAFR and another good year for the county. So I'll answer any questions.
Mr. Johnson?
Jeff, just since I see Debbie and Beverly, and I don't know if Andrea's back, just your folks that are here tonight, at least recognize them, because I know they're very...
We have our controller, Debbie Cox, our cash and debt manager, Beverly Lyles. Stand up. And imagine Andrea's at home or upstairs watching, probably, if I had to guess.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And this is, in this process, is Debbie's central project for the year. She, being the controller of the financial statements, are her main project. So she went on vacation as soon as this was done.
Good for her.
Yeah, so.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I think they need to be commended for savings. I go back and look, and it's roughly $8 million. That net savings of that you demonstrated tonight, and I think you should be commended for that. That, with the additional revenue that came in, definitely positions us to be in a better financial state today. Thank you for what you've done.
Any other questions, comments? Just one thing, Jeff. Outstanding debt, it says here we paid $35.6 million in principal this year.
Yes.
Is that about average, or is that on the high side?
The way, depending upon which piece of debt you're looking at, the way that North Carolina does it, if you're working through your general fund, they front load it so that you are paid off, and I believe it's 50% principal by the 10th year. Is that right, Beverly? So the LGC, when they structure your debt, makes your, unlike your mortgage where you'd have
Right.
30 years of equal payment, the LGC structures it so that it is largest at the very first year and then draws down over time.
Okay.
So at any given year, you should be going down in your debt payment. And that's 35 probably out of about 45 million. So that 35 plus another 10 to cover interest. So yeah, then there's a detailed, I believe there's a detailed debt schedule in the notes
Okay.
in the CAF for the big document.
Good. Well, I'll echo Commissioner Helms. I think y'all have done a phenomenal job, and appreciate the attention to detail, of course.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the fiscal year 2014 comprehensive annual financial report and the 2014 fiscal year popular annual financial report.
We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor?
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely, go
I don't know
ahead.
whose idea this was, but this is a fantastic idea.
It was Mr. Yates.
This versus this, when most of us have obligations, this is a wonderful tool. So I do encourage and hope you'll continue to do that.
All right. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That'll take us to item number 9.
Kensington Drive was placed on the agenda at the request of the commission. As the board will know, we have a private road that has never been accepted for maintenance purposes, of which a portion actually is on our 12 Mile Creek property. We have been working with the town of Waxhaw for the last 2 years in trying to get this issue resolved. They, in turn, have been working with Wells Fargo, who I think through a default has ended up with this particular roadway. We did receive on Friday a notice from the town of Waxhaw, which I forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners, in which they have noticed a special meeting to be held on November 20th, 2014 at 8:30 a.m. to discuss and possible action related to an agreement with Wells Fargo for the acceptance of Kensington Drive and the matters related thereto. We are asking for the board's direction as it relates to this matter, and if you have more questions, Mr. Bundy, your county attorney, has been working very closely on this project.
Just real quickly, I will let the board know that I was contacted by one of the Waxhaw Town Commissioners, and they are, of course, going to meet and discuss this on November the 20th. So I would ask that before we provide any direction, we wait to see what Waxhaw does on November 20th. Would that be fair to the board? So I'll make that in the form of a motion that we table this until after the town of Waxhaw has their meeting on November 20th. Is that all right with you?
That's fine. Would you like to set a specific date? Would you like for us to report back at your December 1st meeting as to, okay.
All right, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? None? All right, thank you very much. And that will take us to item number 11.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we reappoint Mr. Ray Black and Mike Lutz, who've served us honorably in these roles, back to the Monroe Union County Economic Development Advisory Board.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? All right, and that will bring us to our county manager's comments.
I must say, Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Johnson, it has been my pleasure to serve with you for the last 4 years. I know our start was a little rocky, but I think it has worked out extremely well. And as your manager, I appreciate your dedication to this community, the devotion to the job, and as a taxpayer and resident of this community, I am very grateful for the 4 years that you served. So thank you very much.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you very much. Since this is our final meeting, I would ask the chair and the board to allow me to reflect on the last 4 years. And I've decided to prepare my comments in an effort to be concise and comprehensive while trying to remain unemotional, and I will probably fail at all of the above. In preparing for this final meeting, I tried to think of all the ups and downs that we have been through in the county since 2010. When I decided to file for office in 2010, the unemployment rate in Union County was 11.5%. And Union County had the highest debt per capita in the state. The citizens of Union County were hurting. Most had lost some and some had lost all. We had the highest unemployment rate in the Charlotte region. Union County was closed for business. Since then, Union County, in sweet Union fashion, has fought and clawed back, and not only have we been able to reduce the general obligation debt per capita, according to the latest unemployment report, we are at 6.2%, which is one of the lowest, if not the lowest, in the Charlotte area. This is what happens when you get government out of the way and let the free enterprise system flourish. I've been fortunate not only to serve the citizens of Union County as your commissioner, but I've also had the privilege to serve for 4 years with a board majority that understands the values of limited government, and they understand the value of lower taxes and less spending. They also understand the value of prayer before the start of a meeting. This board was faced with personal, not just as a board, but personal lawsuits, threatening letters if we did not discontinue invoking God's guidance before the beginning of our meetings. The majority of this board at the time said prayer was worth going to jail, and thankfully the courts agreed with us and that we were well within our law. As you can tell, we never stopped. People talk about the 3 J's. Well, folks, I consider to be a privilege to be associated with 2 of the most intelligent men I know. Being grouped with these 2 conservative men is an honor that I will never forget. We made promises when we ran, not to sell the hospital, open the Waxhaw ED, and to cut taxes. And I'm proud to say we batted 1,000. We have a hospital that's growing and leading the way in many medical fields. They just had an open house for the state-of-the-art Women's and Children's Center that I feel so fortunate to have had a very small part in coming to fruition. To think that the prior Board of Commissioners actually wanted to sell our hospital is unimaginable. While I do not live near the Waxhaw ED, I do know residents that do reside in that area can now live comfortably, knowing that they have an emergency facility that is close by that can basically do anything that a hospital emergency room can do. Folks, this facility is unreal and a great asset to Union County. With the changes in industry and therefore required changes in our workforce that we have seen locally as well as regionally, it's important to make sure that we have a workforce that is trained and ready to work. When businesses are considering locating in a new area, of course they look at taxes and quality of life, but also they look at the workforce. This board has always recognized the value of South Piedmont Community College and what it does for our workforce, community, and the economy. By working with Dr. Sedor, we've been able to secure the Beeler Building so that the Union County workforce can always stay ahead of the curve so that we can continue to attract businesses and provide job opportunity for Union County families. Our motto in Union County, as you can see if the screen was not pulled down, is planned progress. But unfortunately, that's not always been the policies of our county. When we took office under the leadership of the then Chairman Jerry Simpson, we decided to tackle future planning by focusing on fiscal sustainability, securing a long-term water source, updating our land use plan to include a transportation for future growth, and modernizing our land use ordinance. Not only have we achieved long-term plans for all of these, we have done so with the promised transparency and public participation that has been lacking in our county government. Every meeting, every work session, and every major committee meeting have all been on TV, can be watched live on the internet and are archived for future reference. This has allowed and encouraged the public to be more involved in their local government. Speaking of our local government, we have a staff of dedicated individuals that never cease to amaze me. We have asked for more and more and more while asking them to do with less and less and less. Our dedicated staff has always found a way to keep Union County operating. Are we perfect? Heck no, but there's always room for improvement. But the pride that our staff takes in their work tells me that Union County is on the right track and Sweet Union will be just fine. I can't begin to speak to every individual in this organization that has helped me over the last 4 years, but there are a few comments I have, or a few that I need to make comment on. Jeff Yates, your cautiously optimistic approach to everything has been refreshing. Every issue was a welcome challenge. You and your staff would always make sure that this board had all the options and information available while understanding that we are a conservative board and a conservative community. You helped explain figures in a way that everyone could understand, which leads to the transparency goals that this board has always sought after. Our finance department is in good hands with you, Jeff. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do. And I think this tonight is a good example of that. It keeps everybody informed of what's going on. Cindy, I think I've summed up what you've done and what you mean to this county at the last meeting that we had. I remember before being ever sworn in, you and I met at my office to get to know each other, and you allowed me to express my concerns about your hiring and the hiring process. You asked me then to give you a chance, and I'm thankful I did. As pretty much everyone in this county knows, I've never been one to praise the actions of the board before us, but I must give them the credit for the decision to bring you to this county. You have always taken direction from this board and did your absolute best to execute the policies that this board has set and executing them under the directions that this board gave them. As I mentioned earlier, you and Jeff Yates have constructed a budget process and a budget that everyone in this county can pick up, read, and understand how their local government functions, where the funds come from, and where they go. I could go on, but I'll simply say that Union County is a better place with you as the manager. Most folks don't know this, but as a commissioner, we only hire and fire 3 positions in county government, one being the manager, and the other 2 being county attorney and the county clerk. While seeking a county attorney, it was clear that we needed an experienced attorney that not only knew Union County, but one that also lived in Union County and also had a vested interest in her success. You do not have to go to Charlotte to get a good attorney. We have plenty right here in Union County. Ligon Bundy has always made sure that this board and the county stayed out of trouble as much as we could, even though we'd find our ways to get back in there sometimes. I always knew that the legal advice that he provided would be unbiased and with our best interest at heart, even when it wasn't the answer that we wanted. Union County has faced its fair share of lawsuits over the last 4 years. Some we won, some we lost, and some that are still under appeal. That being said, if I had to do it all over again, I'd hire you every time. I'm proud to call you a friend and look forward to you protecting the county for many years. As former county commissioner, any former county commissioner within the last number of years will tell you that Lynn West, our clerk, is one person that we cannot live without in county government. Everyone is important, but Miss Lynn is the one that makes the job tolerable and helps us be successful. The term trooper doesn't begin to describe what Miss Lynn does. She is at every meeting and always makes sure that we have the information and the tools we need to transact business. From the phone calls reminding us, or at least me, when different meetings are to make sure that we have the required elected official forms filed with the state, to making sure that we are all well fed, just to name a small few. Miss Lynn always takes care of her commissioners. Miss Lynn, whether I was walking in for those early morning meetings or dragging in at a night meeting after a long day of work, you always made me smile. I pray for whoever's on this board that you never retire because you're irreplaceable. I will miss you, and I'm sure I will see you around. Thank you for being a good friend. Just a second. 4 years ago, I had the privilege of being sworn in by my dad. I called my mom and dad yesterday. And said that it'd be pretty cool for them to come to my first and last meeting. They always taught me to do the best I can and to keep my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ first and family second. Everything good I've become, I owe to these two fine people who are with us tonight. Folks, I have to break the news to you. I'm sure your parents are pretty good, but I have the best on earth, and I'm proud to be their son. My wife, Amanda, she's my rock. She's been 100% supportive of me every step of the way. She encourages me when I was ready to throw in the towel, and she also tempered me when I got a little crazy. I will simply say that behind every good elected official, there's a spouse that supports and loves. Otherwise, they couldn't do it. I love you, babe. I was hanging out with my two boys the other day, and one of them said, "So, Daddy, you won't be a commissioner anymore?" I said, "That's right, son." His response was, "Yay, that means you get to be home and play with us more." Folks, every decision I've ever made sitting on this dais, including my decision to run in the first place, was because of my family. In the end, my family has always and will always come second only to God. Now to my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Helms, we haven't always agreed on a whole lot, but we've always found a way to have good, quality, open discussion and dialogue, and ultimately sometimes have to agree to disagree. You've always been respectful toward me, even when I express my views a little directly. Thank you for supporting me as vice chair on your first year. Chairman Agmas, thank you for your friendship and for always giving me an ear to vent, even when you didn't have time and had your own struggles to deal with. You're a fine leader and a fine commissioner. And as soon to be a private citizen, I feel comfortable knowing that your conservative leadership will be on this board. Commissioner Thomas, when we were campaigning together, we spent hours and hours and hours on the trail, speaking to different groups, putting out signs, going to different functions, etc. I don't know if you remember this, but the night before the election day, we were putting out signs on polling sites, eating lemon cookies and drinking chocolate milk, and you said to me, "Johnson, we may just screw up and win this thing tomorrow." And I quote. Well, Jonathan, we did screw up and win this thing, and I'm happy we did. I look at what we've been able to accomplish, and I'm proud to say I was part of it. The past 4 years and your friendship will never be forgotten. Vice Chairman Simpson, words cannot describe what you've meant to me or this county. You've always been the father figure of this board. You've always been swift to hear and slow to speak. You're the epitome of honor and integrity. When I was gathering my comments, I was trying to decide whether or not to tell this story, and I actually even called him today to ask for permission to tell this story. But then I figured, hey, this is my last meeting, and the worst thing that could happen is I'd be a star in another cartoon on a local comedy website. So I figured I'd tell it anyways. In my first 2 years on this board, we had some pretty stark contrast in beliefs. We were part of a conservative group, and the others were pretty liberal. And I remember one meeting, I just got bent out of shape. I called the then Chairman Simpson, started saying, "They're doing this and they're doing that, and they want to do this and they're saying this," and on and on and on. Jerry never got upset. He never said anything. So I said, "Jerry, does this not make you furious?" And in Jerry's typical manner and response, he said, "Well, I don't really like it, but I ain't that worried about it." I said, "Well, Jerry, how can you not be worried about it?" He said, "I got 3 votes." Ultimately, you'll be very hard-pressed to find a man to ever hold the position of county commissioner in Union County that has as much passion and love for Union County as Jerry Simpson. You've meant the world to me, and I'll always cherish these 4 years in our friendship. Lastly, I'd like to welcome the 2 new commissioners coming on this board and also give you a challenge. You will be part of a fine organization with a dedicated staff, and you will serve on this board with 3 very upstanding citizens. I hope that you will continue the planned progress that we started in 2010. starting with the adjustment of the tax rate back to 66 cents, a rate that we fought hard as a board to maintain. I encourage you to focus on growing the budget pie by growing the tax base instead of keeping taxes high. I encourage you to work with the three gentlemen that will remain on this board. Their knowledge and history into the issues that we face and the projects that we are working on will be vital to the success of Union County. Lastly, I encourage you to remember that you represent Union County and that we do not have districts for a reason. You represent each and every citizens of this county, whether they voted for you or not. Ultimately, I wish you good luck. Last but not least, the citizens of Union County. Thank you for entrusting me and honoring me with the privilege of being your commissioner. My family and I have been honored to serve you. My goal is to help Union County be a better place today than it was when we started, and to put it on a path of planned progress. And I hope you feel that we've accomplished our goal. With that, I wish everyone a good evening and a happy Thanksgiving. That was 12 pages, by the way. Sorry about
I
that.
thought it was 4 years. Commissioner Helms.
Well, I appreciate it, and I want to say once again, I had the opportunity of serving with the EMS committee, and the citizens, Butch, representing the community, and the EMS, the hospital, the volunteer fire department. Their working together was phenomenal. They demonstrated how open communication and dialogue you can achieve any goal you set in front of you. And I just thank you for the opportunity to participate in that committee. Secondly, and not leastly, I want to thank Commissioner Johnson. We probably agreed more than we disagreed.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate it. They referred to me as the old man because I have kids older than them. But I learned a long time ago, and they've just proved it right, is that you have to listen to them. I learned a lot from you and Jonathan, and I appreciate the support that you've given over, and it's been a pleasure working with you. And I look forward to working with the new board. I think all our goals are the same. Stoney and Lance, I look forward to y'all joining the board, and I think you will make all the citizens of Union County proud, including Mr. Johnson here. But thank you, and I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving.
Vice Chairman Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, you, of course, have heard a little bit about the campaign, and I was often, or the two beside me were often referred to as Jerry's kids during the campaign. Todd called me a father figure, and I may exceed them significantly in years, but I can tell you that I fall well below in IQ. I have never had the opportunity to work with two young men that offer as much potential, have as much political savvy, and have remained focused on the issues and move this county forward as Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Thomas. And I truly appreciate the relationship that we've shared over 4 years. I don't know if it'll ever be as much fun, because these two guys are extremely fun to work with. It has been an action-oriented board. We have focused not on individuals but on issues and tried to work to move this county forward. So in all sincerity, I wish you guys both the best, and I know you'll be extremely successful in whatever continued path you take.
Mr. Thomas.
Not 12 pages, I hope.
No. Keep it to 2 years.
I don't have to repeat all of this, but do bear with me if I do repeat some of the things that I've said tonight. But I want to thank the board for their support tonight for HealthQuest. It is a great organization, and I got to tell a little political story real quick. 2007, when I was asked to run for commissioner the first time, I met with a guy by the name of Harry Sherwood, and for those of you to know, Harry was big in the Democratic Party, and here I was, Republican, asking him for advice whether I should run or not. But I knew Harry was successful, but more importantly, it wasn't about politics in Union County for Harry. Harry loved Union County. He loved Wingate University, and that's where my roots were. I called Harry to the office one day, and Harry sat back. He wouldn't make eye contact with me, just kind of rocked back in the chair. I said, Harry, I got a question to ask you. I'm thinking about running for commissioner. What you think? You sure you want it? I said, "Sure, I guess." I wasn't real sure what all the job entailed, to be quite frank with you. I wasn't sure what I was getting into. But working for Jesse Helms, I knew I wanted to be in public office, and that sounded like a pretty good place to start. And I asked Harry, I said, "Well, Harry, do you think I ought to run or not?" Harry goes, "Might as well." And I couldn't get much out of Harry. If you knew Harry, he wanted your money. He's moving on to the next person to raise a little money for something else. And finally I said, "Harry, let me just put it to you like this. If I run, I don't want to lose. What do you think my chances are winning?" He said, "Boy, your chances of winning and your chances of losing are 50-50. I say run, and run hard. You got a better chance if you run hard than if you don't run at all." I ran and lost. But you know, I learned more from that loss than I did from my victory. I realized along the way that wasn't God's timing. It was in 2010. So that being said, I'd like to thank the citizens for the opportunity. It's been an honor. I've said on many occasions, it's not so important who sits in this chair. It's the fact that the voices are heard. And I hope, whether you voted for me or not, you can say your voices was heard. I think we saw evidence tonight. Union County is a little better off than when we inherited it. Commissioner Johnson touched on many of those issues. I'm like, man, they seem easy now, but they were hard then. To the new board coming on, I wish you great success. Lance, Stoney, you guys have got a burden on you. I wish you nothing short of success. If you're successful, my life, quality of life is better. And it's a big task to put on your shoulders. To the staff, thank you. Cindy, Lynn, Jeff, Richard, and Jeff sitting there, Ligon. I could go on and on. So many here. Mr. Teague, all of our deputies that stood here tirelessly night in and night out and protected us so we could go home to our families, I thank you. History will judge this board. You've heard tonight some of the successes, some of the failures and challenges. One of the things I can tell you, in my opinion, whether we were right or wrong on a lot of the issues, is we hopefully will go down as being known as productive. But if you're on the inner circle, I hope you'll know that we went down having fun, because we did. And if you couldn't tolerate a joke or being picked on, you wouldn't have made it on this board long. We got some great friends with us here tonight, and I'm not going to begin naming them, but I will tell you of two. Don Carr, you got me into this, and I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for that phone call going to work that morning at about 7:30. And he left a message which I will not repeat, and I'll keep personal. But it shook me to the core. I cut the phone off till about 2 o'clock that day and came home and said, I'm running. And that's what we did. Donnie, your friendship has meant so much. From the hospital deal to just being there to help us out, to advice on water and sewer. Friends like you are limited. And that's why we end up with so little. I apologize for the tears, but when you are passionate about what you do, it's hard to say goodbye. Last but not least, I'm joined here with my family and friends. The kids, as they came in tonight, Grayson, Alexis, Grace, Corey, Heather, thank you for being here. I have to tell you a story. We were going to school one morning. Grayson, I hope you don't mind me telling the story. Grayson says, Daddy, you gonna run for re-election? I said, no, son, I'm not. I hadn't told anybody I wasn't going to, but I told him. Why not, Daddy? I want you to be a commissioner. I said, son, I want to spend more time with you. Tomorrow night I get to sign up to be a coach of a basketball team. That makes tonight worth it. You all have made me proud. You all have given more than most kids should ever give. And I thank you from all of the people from Union County for your support. Last but not least, I agree with Commissioner Johnson. Prayer has been the cornerstone of this board and will forever be the cornerstone of this board, because that's what this country's made of. With that being said, may God bless Union County. May God bless America. May God bless each and every one of you and the citizens that are watching tonight. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I bid you all farewell.
All right. Thank you. I will keep them brief. Thank you, gentlemen, for your tireless service, your friendship. And one thing I learned from you two was that, I think you said it earlier, it's not who sits in the seat, but it's why. And you all never let that go to your head, and I appreciate that. And you set out a great course for us, and we'll see it through to the best of our ability. With that, I wish everyone a good night. And Grayson, I hope you have a scoring team. With your coach, I question it. But we'll wish you best in your basketball endeavors. With that, good night, and God bless. All in favor of adjourn? Aye.